Hello everyone, my name is Ephraim Katsir, and on behalf of Sephardic Heritage International in DC, or SHIN-DC, welcome to our Maqam of the Week webinar series with Syrian Jewish vocalist, Buddhist, and teacher Shasho-Levy, who will now begin class number 8, Maqam Hijaz 2.0.
Thank you, Ephraim. Hi, everyone. It's good to be all together once again. So happy that we can all do this, that we just bring such a ray of light into these weeks, to be able to gather together and to go through the cycle of the maqamat according to our tradition. Today, I want to start a little differently than we've started in the past. Normally, I start by sketching the maqam of the week with a taqasim to give a little flavor. But since we've done Maqam Hijaz before in the past, and I've given you my take on the maqam, I thought what better way to approach this maqam today than with the work of the masters of our tradition. So I think a really good way to approach this maqam today is with a dulab and a taqasim from one of the greats of the Judeo-Arabic music tradition, Yusuf Zarur, who is one of the real masters of the Iraqi tradition, of both the Judeo-Iraqi tradition and actually of the Iraqi Arabic classical tradition, who represented Iraq among the Arabic musicians of the world in Egypt in the 1930s at the conference in Cairo. And this dulab is actually one of the standard dulabs in the Arabic music tradition. So if we could share that clip and play that now for everyone, it would be wonderful for everyone to hear. Such a beautiful classic piece of Hijaz. more can be said about the Hijaz than that. It's completely sketched out in all of its permutations. So if we look at and by the way, I actually encourage everyone to look further into the recordings from that era. There are many compilations of both Iraqi Jewish Bahot, kind of the parallel tradition to the Pizmonim of the Syrian tradition, and also of Iraqi Jewish recordings of general Arabic classical and popular styles by the Al-Kuwaiti brothers and other incredible composers and virtuoso instrumentalists. And certainly Yusuf Zarur is one of the greatest Kanunjis of all time. And just really, really remarkable talent. But Hijaz today it's the maqam of this week. It's the maqam not necessarily that is associated as much with thank you. Okay, so here we have the sire of the maqam. You can see the scale of it. So this Shabbat is unequivocally Hijaz. So in many cases we look at some of the sources that we find, and there's disagreement. You'll have different Hazani, different sources that will say perhaps that a week can be associated with different maqamat. But this week is unequivocally associated with Hijaz. Why? Because Shabbat Devarim is the Shabbat of Echa. It is the Shabbat before Tisha B'Av. So it is unequivocally associated with sadness. And as we've learned previously, Maqam Hijaz in the Syrian tradition, it is a maqam that is associated with sadness and with sorrow. It's used in a house of Abelud, a house of mourning. And so we use this maqam this week. Hijaz on D can establish it thusly. D, first establishing genes Hijaz. D, the E flat again is a little bit sharp. It's not quite. You wouldn't want to think of it necessarily as a quarter tone, but it's just slightly sharp. And similarly, the F sharp is slightly flat. What you want to think of as just softening the distance between those notes is how I would say it. Because you're always going to sort of modulate between them. So it's not quite, it's not like that. It's and then up to the G. Again, there are two forms of Maqam Hijaz. We have Hijaz Rast and Hijaz Nahawan. Hijaz Nahawan being the version that most people are familiar with. Nahawan dan G up there. Yet, the version that is perhaps in some ways more common to a lot of the Syrian music is the Hijaz Rast, with Rast on G. So you have Hijaz, Jins Hijaz on D, up to Jins Rast on G, and descending, you would have Jins Nahawan. And then oftentimes below, you'll have Rast below. And that can be a leading Jins. So that's kind of the basic side of the maqam. So the way that one would develop that in a taqasim, we heard that in Yusuf Zarur's taqasim, but the way I would develop it would be as follows. So in that sense, I ascended with the genes of Hijaz, and then ascended with the Rast, spent some time with the Rast, and as I descended, moved to the genes Nahawan, and then back down to the Hijaz. And in doing so, sketched out the whole sire of the Maqam as it is laid out here. Any questions about the technicalities of the Maqam before we move on to this week's particularly interesting Pismon? Okay, I think let's move on to the Pismon, which I think will illustrate very nicely the interplay between the Rast and the Nahawan. This is a fascinating Pismon, in my opinion. First of all, it was written by Chacham Raphael Tabush, the founder of our Pismon tradition from Halab. And among his Pismonim, this is, I couldn't say for sure that this is the shortest, but it may be. It's extremely short, as you can see. It's 4 lines. And we Halabim, we really like long Pismonim. We like lots of verses. We like a very wordy, rich tradition that descends in spirit from the golden age of Spain. Really long, lengthy poetry that really is sometimes verbose in some ways. You saw several weeks ago, we looked at Eroch Mahalal Nibi, which is, I don't know, it's 20-something stanzas. It's really, really long. This is the opposite of that in so many ways. It's very, very short, and it's in Aramaic. It's one of the only Pismonim that's in Aramaic. Well, we have many, many, many songs that are in Aramaic, but they're not properly speaking Pismonim. They're older. They're bakashot, like things like Yaribon Alam. They're from an older strata of spiritual compositions, mostly from Najara, mostly from older writers. Not so much from the Pismonim repertoire of the 19th and 20th century. And so this is, as the text at the bottom that you'll see from the Pismonim archive says, it's based on a text from Daniel after God saves Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah from the burning furnace. So this is a sort of a poetic adaptation of that. And it's based on a very famous Syrian song, Ahwa al-Ghazal, and it really has a beautiful flavor of the Hijaz that you can see because the Hijaz, Nahawand, and Rast are very much connected in the way this song goes. So the melody of the song is mostly in Hijaz, Nahawand, but there are implied responses that are Hijaz Rast. What do I mean? أدوي كلمة ربين حظهم الليالي. The response is Hijaz Rast. The Rah respond to you if you were singing this in a group. But the melody itself is more of a Nahawan. أدوي كلمة ربين Nahawan. Actually steps out from strictly Hijaz there, if you want to get technical, with really what is sort of natural. So that's the first phrase. And then the descent.
Looks like Asher got cut off. Just give us 1 second to resolve this.
Sorry about that, everyone. Some connectivity issues, I suppose. Okay, so we were in the middle of the phrase. So this Pismon really, in its brevity, really gives you the whole flavor of the Hijaz, is what I was explaining. So Adoi kema rabribin havu malani Adoi kema rabribin havu malani نشمت من عيني سحراني ومي برحيلي نشمت من عيني سحراني ومي برحيلي. So you have the whole of the Hijaz in this. So the first phrase, Adoi kema rabribin havu malani Adoi kema rabribin havu malani نشمت من عيني سحراني ومي برحيلي نشمت من عيني سحراني وببرحيلي. Okay, does everyone understand where the changes happen? The very slight changes between the Rast and the Nahawand. They're very slight. It's at the Nishmatin. Nishmatin ayn. That's Rast. Nishmatin ayn sahra. So there's a difference of a quarter flat between those two notes. Nishmatin ayn sahra. And that's what gives this Pismon its flavor of complete Hijaz. Not just Hijaz Nahawand or Hijaz Rast, the whole Hijaz, but it doesn't really even have a tremendous range of melody. It does that largely through inference, and the inference comes from, in a way, what would be the call and response. I included in the materials for today's class 2 different versions of this Pismon. One is the Sabah Fakhri version of Ahwa al-Ghazal, and the other is a version of Syrian cantors in New York doing this Pismon with musical accompaniment. And both versions will give you a sense of that call and response. Let me go through this now, and I'll show you a little bit of where the Rast should be emphasized, where the Nahawand should be emphasized, and how this Pismon is felt, really. Adoi kema rabribin havu malani Adoi kema rabribin havu malani Nishmat min ayni suhrani umi barkhili نشمت من عيني سحراني قومي برحيلي الطوهي كما ربيبين وفمالاني رحمن رحمن الطوهي كما ربيبين حفمالاني يا عين يا عين نشمت من عيني سحراني قومي برحيلي نشمت من عيني سحراني قومي برحيلي كل هون أمر الشيرة الملهخاني يا عين كل هون أمر شيرة الملهخاني رحمن رحمن بإسرائيل مقدمي شيرة لي İsrail mikdimmiş Şiretoneli الطوي كيما ربربين حبوا ملالي رحمن رحمن الطوي كيما ربربين حبوا ملالي يال يال دشمت العين سخراني ومي برخيلي دشمت العين سخراني And that's one that you can just keep singing over and over again. The way that I've heard it done is they just keep singing it over and over and over, and it can be very, very hypnotic, and it can get faster and faster and faster. Any questions about that particular pismon? Is it clear to everyone the transition between the nahawand and the rask? I think that is the element that can be most confusing, I suppose.
That's clear. I have another question.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Aviva.
Yes.
You threw in a couple of things that weren't in the text, right? Rahman, Rahman, or
Yes.
Yael, Yaeli.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, those are standard fillers, I guess you could say. That there's in Arabic music and in the Sephardic music of the Middle East, there's just there's the ya'ini, ya'leli, all of these things, the night, my eye, the night, my heart, all of these sort of standard fillers that come as part of the Arabic classical music tradition. And basically, there are different. That's one form of vocal improvisation. Then there's also the mawal. The mawal is a vocal improvisation that has words. So in the Syrian tradition, Syrian Jewish tradition, you'll often have pieces of Tehillim or something like that will be used as not necessarily as a filler, but as something that's like an introduction that will give just words that will have meaningful words that will be used for a vocal improvisation. The Rahman is just it's a common, it's an attribute of God that's used commonly in music. In Arabic music and certainly in Sephardic music. And in a case like this, it just fits well syllabically between the phrases, and it's a way to especially when you're say you're at like a sebit. A sebit would be a Syrian after lunch on Shabbat in a Syrian community. You have a sebit where everyone sings songs together, sings pismonim for a long time. And so in that context, there's not going to be instruments. And so these phrases sort of develop a repertoire of filling in the little bits of ornamentation that the instruments would otherwise do. So in the context of this pismon, it would be that they fill in what the oud or the violin or the kanun would otherwise do. And allow for the experiencing of the full range of the maqam in this piece.
Got it.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us.
Second class.
Any other questions?
I'm not sure I understand why a maqam that is associated with sadness is the maqam to which a pizmon that is expressing gratitude and majesty. You know, am I missing a connection or making a disconnect that shouldn't be there?
It's a good question. There is a wide variety of music in every maqam. So the maqam itself may have a certain connotation, but I would say it's possible to find pieces that express any emotion within any maqam in terms of text and in terms of what they're expressing. Because on Shabbat, you're never going to really have a sad Shabbat tefillah.
Yes.
So while Hijaz has a connotation of sadness, you're still going to try and express joy and the glory of God's kingship and creation and all of these other attributes. So the sadness is expressed, I think, mostly through the actual scale of Hijaz. So like at the beginning of the tefillah, you'll start to feel it. Just when the tefillah is just introduced, you start to feel Iladonai melucha umoshel bagoyim ve'alu moshim ve'ar Sion yishpot et aresai ve'ayta lamonai melucha so on and so forth. You're going to feel the sadness, so on. Just it's more, I think, something that's intrinsic to the way that Hijaz is applied to the actual tefillah setting than it is something of the text and the actual melodies. There are many straight out party songs that are in Hijaz, hafla music, Hijaz. So, you can't necessarily say that all Hijaz is sad. And of course, that's just something that exists in basically Levantine Jewish communities, that association of Hijaz with that. That doesn't exist generally speaking. But, Hijaz, and I would be curious to actually see if that is something that exists in other Jewish communities outside of, the Syrian, Lebanese, Egyptian, some Turkish. I would suspect not. Like, if you go to other Sephardic communities outside of the Maqam cycle world, I would suspect that the Hijaz doesn't hold the same weight. Any other questions that anyone might have related to this particular maqam? The cycle of maqam? Yes.
I have a question. It's not really related to the Hijaz maqam, but it's because when I listen to you singing, maybe because in this conference, not everyone knows deeply about maqam and how to do ornaments about maqamlar. So since I don't really know about Jewish music, but I bet there are ornaments in this kind of music, especially related to the voice. So when you are singing, maybe it's because I'm used to listen to more Turkish Ottoman music, but I don't really feel lots of microtonal movements. But I don't know if it's just your choice, like to make things not very complicated, or it's because of an ecstatic kind of thing, because it's a different field of music, even if it works the same way with the maqamlar. I don't know if I'm clear.
I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Are you saying that you're not hearing microtones in the way I sing, or that the microtones are different?
Since I mostly come from Turkish tradition, in Turkish tradition and also in Arabic, in Egyptian, as I heard, there are more microtonal movements from what I listened on the conference that you were singing the repertoire. But I don't know if it's just your choice or of aesthetic, or maybe it has some rules. I don't really know. So I'm sorry for saying maybe not proper things.
No, I'm just trying to understand what you're saying. Maybe perhaps look, I mean, in the Syrian Jewish tradition, every particular Shabbat prayer is done one maqam, and so there's not a lot of movement between the maqamat. There's a value to staying in one particular maqam. So if you're doing Hijaz, you're going to stay in Hijaz, and you try not to move between them. With the exception of the cycle of the Bakashot, in which there is a lot of transposition between them. I don't know if that is what you're referring to. I don't know. I apologize for not answering your question clearly, but I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, actually, it's a little complicated question, but maybe it's better to say
perhaps
it.
If you maybe want to. Yeah, why don't you reach out to me another time? You can send me an email or something like that. And, I think that would be good. Something that I just want everyone to walk away with today from today's Hijaz class is that Hijaz is not the same as what everyone thinks it might be. It's not. There is, first of all, the tuning of the Hijaz in the Syrian Jewish tradition, which is different than the Hijaz in the Turkish tradition. It's tuned differently. The second and the third note are brought somewhat closer together than they would be on a piano or a guitar. So that's important to note. And then also the importance of jins rast to the Hijaz. Which is very crucial to this particular piece. Well, in terms of microtones, when it comes to Hijaz, Turkish Hijaz is different than Arabic Hijaz in terms of the way that it's tuned. And the way that I'm teaching this is Syrian Jewish Hijaz, which is similar to a standard Arabic Hijaz, I suppose. And that's the jins Hijaz. Rast on top. Descending down with the Nahawat. Before we finish today, let's just go through the Pizmon one more time. نشمة العلم سحراني ومبرحيني نشمة العلم سحراني ومبرحيني كل هنا أمرين الشيرة يغلي خالي رحمن كل هنا أمرين شيرة الملخالي رحمن بإسرائيل بقدمي شيرة لي بإسرائيل بقدمي شيرة لي أتوي كيما نبرمين حاب ملالي أتوي كيما نبرمين سخراني ومتبرحي بشمك نويمي سخراني ومتبرحي. With that, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you all once again for joining. It's just such a joy to be able to share this with everyone. And if anyone has any further questions, please reach out. Feel free to reach out and to ask them, because this is all about the learning and sharing, and it's just really a joy to be able to learn and share with all of you. So Shabbat Shalom Vorach, everyone.
Thank you so much, Asher. This is really the highlight of my week. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
الدوي كيما رغربين حبو ملاني